And welcome back to all of you. Now, of course, we have to thank all of our sponsors for making sure that we get this Big Five Digital Festival on the road and bring it to you virtually. We're always really happy to do that. So our sponsor is very, very valuable to us. And for this session coming up, a special thanks to our sponsor, UL. We're now going to take a look at the importance of Saudi Arabia's Giga-projects in the global and regional context and really see how valuable these projects are. I'm really, really looking forward to this discussion, and I know so many of you are as well. We've heard from lots of you. This is the time now to really pay great attention and get those questions ready, because we will have an opportunity for a Q&A session, so I'm very excited about that, and we will be able to talk to them after the presentation. So we're going to hear from the Director for Site Controls for Amaala, Nicholas Reynolds, will be part of this panel. From NEOM, the Chief Projects Officer, Brett Smythe, is with us, and from the Red Sea Development Company, the Buildings and Places Executive Director, Scott Henshaw. So a tremendous panel lined up for that. And moderating this session is the Vice President and General Manager for the Middle East for UL. I'm very happy to welcome now for this session, Hamid Syed. So Hamid, Syed, so I'm going to hand it over to you. I leave it to you, Hamid, in your good hands. Thanks so much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ethna. I will jump into the topic. For decades, Saudi Arabia has helped the global economic engine run by supplying oil for majority of the nations. Oil revenue makes a large chunk of Saudi's GDP. And I think by now it is a common knowledge that the key points of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 is to diversify their economy and reduce its dependency on oil and gas sector. And the diversification efforts are expected to come from and also at the same time benefits key sectors such as tourism, transportation and logistics, and renewable energy, to name a few. And some of the iconic giga projects being announced as part of the Vision 2030 include NEOM, Red Sea Resort projects, Qiddiya, and Amaala. And that brings us to the topic on hand, which is that faced with the challenge of the coronavirus pandemic and decrease of oil prices, Saudi Arabia's economy is expected to contract by 5.2% in 2020. Real GDP is expected to move back into positive territory from next year, assuming a recovery of the global economy, and this is from The Economist. So as the largest economy in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia has a tough outlook ahead, and its Vision 2030 may be challenged. So I will start off asking the questions of our panelists regarding the impact of the COVID-19. And I will start first with Scott Henshaw. So Scott, the first question that comes to mind is, despite COVID-19, and the ongoing restrictions globally, we are seeing significant progress with the giga projects in Saudi Arabia, NEOM, Qiddiya, Amaala, and Red Sea. New projects are being announced and contracts are being awarded. So what steps are being taken in order to ensure that projects continue during these times?
Thank you, Hamid. Despite the challenging time that we're in, we are continuing to make great progress on the ground at the Red Sea project. And we have awarded more than 500 contracts with a value of over 7.5 billion SAR. We expect to increase our commitments to around 15 billion SAR by the end of the year, with all of our scheduled targets currently on track. So we're still planning to receive our first gas by the end of 2022. Now, for all of that to have happened over the course of this year, business continuity planning was a key focus area for us to ensure that development of our destination continued through the pandemic. And I think really it started with our decision to deploy a dedicated, multidisciplinary, site-based team to our project. And we selected a group from our main office in Riyadh consisting of architects, engineers, construction managers, and we mobilized them to the site. We had a base camp set up, and this really reinforced our team and allowed us to maintain momentum through advancing early works such as earthworks, road construction, marine jetty construction. I think a second step that we took was to look at using local materials so that we would avoid potential import delays. And as an example, we've used over 1 million tons of stone from the local quarries in the building of those marine jetties. So that was an important step. And when we started to see a spike within the country of COVID-19 cases, we got together with our contracting partners and implemented mass PCR testing across the entire construction workforce. Now, this meant that we had to take about a 2-week timeout to conduct the testing and to segregate those who were positive into a quarantine facility. At about that same time, we had changing regulations with WCAIA, and we had to work with the Ministry of Education to secure schools and other facilities to accommodate the workforce in spaces that allowed social distancing. So we were going from 4 square meters per worker to about 12 square meters per worker. And another thing that we did was to hire additional transportation for the workers. So we quadrupled the number of buses that we were running at that time. And I think, all of these things combined with some restrictions around our base camp helped us to contain that virus and to continue making that positive progress and forward momentum on the project. One of the things that we did at our base camp was to limit any outside visitors from coming in. And if some new staff transferred into the base camp, they were quarantined and given a PCR test. It was a 7-day quarantine. We also prevented our staff from traveling out of the general area. So all of these things came together, Hamid, to create a very controlled environment where we could continue working, and we pretty quickly saw the positive cases dwindle down to a point where we've actually lifted a lot of these initial requirements for the contractors. So it's been a very good working relationship with the entire supply chain to make all of that happen.
Thank you, Scott. That's fascinating. And I also find it interesting that you sourced as much local material as possible so that to reduce your dependency on the supply chain that was definitely affected during the pandemic. Nicholas, if I may ask you a related question, and I think some of the points that Scott mentioned is about doing things differently. So I would say the pandemic has forced all of us to adapt and do things differently. So in the world of project management and construction, have we learned innovative ways of doing things now? And some of those things, do you foresee that they will become the new normal?
Hamid, thank you. Good to be on the panel. Thank you, Scott. Yes, I think that things have changed a lot this year, particularly at our Amaala project, which is adjacent to the Red Sea. We're running a little bit further behind in program timing, so we are not as advanced in the site works, but we are now also on site doing bulk earthworks, doing enabling works, setting up construction villages for our workers, and looking forward to engaging with some of those same protocols and to deal with the issues that have occurred over this last 12 months. At the moment, there is no closure date on when things will be back to normal. when and if, some of these things and restrictions and protocols may stay in place for a long time. So we too have had to consider how we are going to deal with our next several years of construction and thinking about how we can do it differently. I think what happened pre-COVID is different. I think the direction of the Kingdom and the 2030 vision is outlining education and training for local Saudis, and that's a big focus of ours, to try and bring Saudi citizens on board with our teams at all levels of the project, from the professional, consulting and workforce and contracting side. Also bringing on local materials in the same context, the border closures, the risk of getting things out of countries that may be shut down or may not, as we see Europe is going back into lockdowns. Hasn't really affected goods traffic, but that still causes issues with bringing people and materials, and relying on that when you need a critical piece of infrastructure is always going to be difficult. So I think a big focus of what all of the Giga projects are doing is to really look at generating the Saudi economy, which we know is not small, and trying to fire it up to deal with the works that we have ahead of us. So also I would add to that, the digital revolution is making a big change. We are working across several fronts. We've got people in the UK, we've got people in the US and in Asia, various consultants and professionals in different aspects, from airports to marine works. And we're having to coordinate that through our office in Riyadh currently until we move to site, and our site offices. So people are working remotely. People are having to be real time making big decisions, and that information knowledge transfer, the implementation of really sophisticated project management systems and tracking systems is something that's critical to what we're doing. So we like the other projects, will be looking at real-time drone footage, for example, to ensure that we know what's going on site. We'll have various tracking methodologies, and working closely with our contractors to make sure that whatever we do is spread across the whole site. We have lots of different assets being built in different locations, from an island to on land, and up in the mountains and down on golf courses, and everything needs to be coordinated and everything needs to be tracked. And that communication and digital infrastructure is going to be critical to what we do. So yes, I think construction has been redefined in this last 12 months, and I think the Giga projects particularly, it's not just a single project sitting on a block of land. It's a coordinated series of activities across a very wide front, and it's been an exciting challenge and a few more years to go.
Thank you, Nicholas. Fascinating, feedback from you, and time permitting, I would love to hear more from you on digitization, on the impact of digitization, or some examples on the construction industry. But I'll come back, if we have some time left after these discussions. But let me go to Brett. Brett, if I may ask you again, on the COVID impact of COVID on these Giga projects. In your view, what has been the impact of the pandemic on Saudi Arabia's construction sector, and what is the market outlook for the future?
Thanks, Hamid. I'd just like to probably just make a couple of points on the previous questions as well as a lead into that. So in terms of what steps are being taken to ensure projects continue, which is an important, I guess, lead into that is, and other than the comments that have been made, NEOM also is working on site, and we have been all throughout this year and even some parts of last year. We have a construction village with over 450 people here, and we're actually building construction villages to 30,000 people, so very, very large, of which the first 10,000 will be open in January. So we've really gone through COVID in terms of some major early works. Similarly, it's been more on the basic earthworks and the like, but construction villages which require to get a lot of movement of materials and the like as well. So we've had a cross-section of being able to understand how to operate during COVID, and certainly for the workforce and other areas, we've put similar aspects into our operations. The very important part has been the commitment from our board and also PIF as our benefactor, if you like. And in fact, it's been seen as more important that we are proceeding at pace, given the circumstances globally and particularly for the economy. So I can certainly say that very strong steps, I think, top down in terms of ensuring projects continue in these times as a base. Certainly, in terms of doing things differently, we're underway for one of the largest transport infrastructure projects, if you like, which is sitting under NEOM in the world at the moment. And we're actually having to operate in 7 different locations in the world as almost like a virtual design and coordination and project management, which has thrown some challenges. But the benefit of those is I think we're operating more efficiently through that, which I think will certainly, and I think this is happening globally, will change the way that planning and engineering and then getting into construction on some of the mega projects, and particularly if it's infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, the likes of transport infrastructure, that's something that I've seen a shift from my experience that has come this past year, which has been challenging to set up, but I think the benefits of that will go forward. So to answer your question in terms of the single most significant challenge from the pandemic, I think the restricted movement at all levels has been a real challenge, and that's from a client, partners, supply chain, materials and equipment, and particularly where it's required internationally. And like I said in the lead into that, I think the benefits of some smart planning around that is very important. Certainly materials and products that go into construction, we've found challenges, but we've had a lot of, let's say when a door opens, a door shuts, another one opens, in terms of getting the support of the government to open ports, making sure that it's done in an appropriate way, but looking for answers to move products around the country, even when there were regional lockdowns. So it's really about having that coordination to get through those challenges when they come up. But certainly the restricted movement has been the greatest challenge that we've seen this year.
Thank you, Nicholas. You just confirmed the age-old phrase, necessity being the mother of all inventions. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I'll move into a kind of different topic, and you all have expertise in this. This will be about project delivery. So, Nicholas, if I may start with you. So, with ambitious timelines in place for Saudi Arabia's new Giga-projects, what lessons can the country learn from Dubai, if any, and other rapidly developed mega projects across the world?
Thanks for that question. I think one big factor that I've worked in Dubai previously, now working in Saudi Arabia, and worked in other countries across the world. One thing that I really like about the Saudi approach, and it comes back to what I said earlier about 2030 vision, is to engage and get the local citizenry involved and looking for local jobs, local training. We know that Saudi is a very young country. Its median age is something like 35. There are a lot of young people, a lot of well-educated young people looking for work, and that work traditionally in the Middle East, in the construction industry, as we know, is very much driven by the contract expat labour from the subcontinent and other places, which is something that is required where there is limited population numbers. Like in Dubai, there are very limited numbers of Emiratis, so they bring in expat workforces. But I think here in the Kingdom, we're looking to do something different to that. What we're trying to do is to be more sophisticated in the building technologies that we use, and that requires some levels of prefabrication and off-site construction, and as I mentioned earlier, digital technologies and systems. So what we would like to be part of is not so much the traditional paradigm of building with concrete in the desert and concrete mixes and sand and water, but what else can we do that's more sophisticated, that can use factory production techniques, that can have people working in laboratories. We can have technology and training and systems of Saudi citizens to run these operations. So I think that, it may not happen tomorrow, but it's certainly a start. And I can see that across the projects that we have ahead of us, Some of them are very sophisticated buildings, there's no doubt about it, and we have to build them in very remote places. So prefabrication and off-site methodologies will be important to how we build some of the structures that some of the world's leading architects are designing. And I think that the Kingdom is well placed to bring on a local workforce that can be trained and digitised as well to participate and leave a lasting legacy. So we're looking forward to being part of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicholas. And as a personal experience, when I've been in the region for five years now, when I would travel to Saudi 5 years ago, almost all the hotel employees would be expats. And last year, before the travel restrictions kicked in, I started noticing more and more, employees in the hotel industry were being done by young Saudis, to your point.
Absolutely. And I think, the tourism industry is brand new, pretty much in the Kingdom, and we're inventing the infrastructure for that. In all of the Giga projects, we're building mostly tourism focused for Amaala and Red Sea, and we're looking forward to engaging the local communities.
Right. Great points. Thank you. Brett, if I may go to you next. Some argue that there is a high qualification entry bar for contractors. Now, while there are many successful local firms, the entry requirements may be challenging, causing most of the projects to be awarded to international firms. Do you think that's the case, and can you, comment on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think to answer that, we need to step back, and for NEOM in particular, it is such a massive undertaking, and the actual construction of NEOM actually never stops. Certainly over the next 10, 15 years, there's huge ambitions in terms of population and the key sectors that will be returning GDP to NEOM, to Saudi Arabia in the future. So in terms of that, from nothing here, we're creating an incredibly complex and large ecosystem that will be continuously growing. It's obviously reported that the ambition is to have 1 million residents by 2030. The ambition goes well beyond that. So the backbone infrastructure, and I mentioned design for that, and the logistics of establishing the build for this is something that's never seen before. We will be looking to have well over 150,000 workers just in the build of NEOM over the coming and even within the next 5 years. So in terms of the size of it, there isn't sufficient capacity even in the local market to cope with the size and complexity of NEOM and to take on that at the same time other giga projects and major projects within the region. So whilst COVID has been a huge factor and the last few years have been in a particular way, we will be, particularly towards the back end of 2021, getting into the serious construction phase, particularly for NEOM. Certainly 2021 has a lot of the infrastructure part of it, and as it was said before, earthworks, establishing water and energy and the services and utilities required. So they're huge contracts in themselves that will flow firstly. It's not the case that most projects will be awarded to international firms for NEOM. Certainly, if we look at our backbone infrastructure alone, there's over 25 million cubic metres of earthworks. There's tens and tens of millions of cubic metres of concrete, bridges and the like, and then we get into the tunnelling. So in terms of the size of the industry in Saudi Arabia, there is more than enough work, even in the initial works. Then we get into more complicated works that will be coming forward, where we're promoting joint ventures, particularly with international, where the technology and capability of certain aspects of the build are. We're also promoting in our procurement requirements in terms of local industry. We certainly are making sure that in terms of NEOM and our founding laws, because we will have founding laws here that will be established and they will be on a fair basis. So certainly we have minimum conditions of satisfaction, and we will be requiring that of all of our contractors in terms of environment, safety, and the usual aspects that standards are set. So certainly NEOM standards will be high. We'll be also working with the local industry in areas of advancement in technology, performance and the like. So what we see in the long term, and when I say long term, I'm not talking about a 5-year build, I'm talking about 10 years, 15, 20, 30. There's opportunities, particularly for the local industry, to be first movers here, set up not just the construction side of it, but the downstream, the supply chain, the manufacturing. And with our industrial city and our sectors we'll be setting up here, we'll be giving the opportunity, firstly and particularly for the local industry, for being able to set up here and have establishments for years to come. So, you know, it's a very large project. It's got a huge pipeline of work, and it provides an incentive for companies, and particularly the local and regional companies, to look at the long term and also invest where need be in terms of establishing their bases up here. And certainly I agree absolutely wholeheartedly with what Nicholas was saying about modern methods of construction, and we're certainly looking at changing the way that design and construction is done, and taking a lot of it out of the field and putting it into smarter, faster, more sustainable ways, whether it's mass modular, 3D printing and the like. And what that's going to do is it's going to take a lot of man hours from labour on site and put it into more skilled workforce across the construction industry, which is actually going to give more opportunities for the local organisations and less, less about third-party international labour on site.
Great. Thank you so much. Scott, if I may jump to you next. Many people believe that the on-time delivery of projects in the kingdom has improved due to improvements in payments. Now, while there are some that are of the opinion that more can be done to improve the long-awaited time frame for reaching project completion, what is your thought on this? Has there been an improvement? If not, what needs to be changed, do you think?
I think certainly from our side, we believe that we've contributed to an improvement on payment processing. You know, as a newly formed private development company, we're agile and we're able to process payments quickly. When we established the Red Sea Development Company, we set up a digital project management platform to help facilitate that. And I think that, you know, our ambition is to maintain to sustain high levels of cash flow across the supply chain. And that's always key to ensure that you don't have delays in the project. I think there's another part of it, which is also ensuring that variations and claims are dealt with in a timely manner. And we've all been involved in many projects where they were, you know, sort of moved to the end of the project, and this affected contractors' ability to bill against those variations, or, you know, in some cases, project may not allow for, you know, billing on account. And so we've been committed to trying to process these payments and variations and claims, and to where we can agree to fairly determine the value of the variation. I think that, you know, one of the things we've done on the consultant side is to allow for consultants, and this is per our contract, to bill up to 60% of a particular design stage payment during that stage. So for example, if schematic design is 14 weeks, we allow the consultant to bill for work in progress up to 60% of the value of that stage, and then with the balance 40% being released after the stage is accepted. And, you know, this reduces risk for the consultant. It keeps cash flow moving, And I think that that's been a very helpful strategy from our perspective. But we're not only committed to paying on time per the contractual terms, but if quality of work is excellent, we may actually be ahead of the contractual position. So I think that, you know, from our perspective as a developer, making timely progress payments is part of us mitigating that risk of delay. We know that contractors and consultants, when they have cash flow, they're typically going to perform at a higher level, and that's what we're aiming to do.
Thank you so much, Scott. I think I'm going to just shift gears and move towards sustainability and environment regarding these Giga projects. So, Nicholas, if I may start with you, how aligned are your projects with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals?
Thank you. Yeah, sustainability is very much a key pillar of Amaala and the project that we are undertaking. We're all on the Red Sea in very sensitive marine ecosystems. We have turtle nesting beaches. We have rare species of animals and birds. And some of the flora and the actual landscape itself is important that we don't destroy that in building something that wants to leave the legacy. So sustainability of all sides and the social aspect as well of the local people, you know, they're excited that jobs will be coming from this, you know, in this region of Northeast Saudi. There's not been a lot of employment in recent times. So we're looking at being sustainable in creating jobs, in looking after the landscape and making sure that our development projects are sustainable as well. I know there's been a lot of work done between the Giga-projects Brett mentioned earlier, the big infrastructure utility systems that they're putting in for water and power, in energy grids, solar power stations. They're fabulous. I'm not going to say desalination, I'm not sure of the word, Brett, but the big domed water regeneration plants that you guys are planning as well. So there's some amazing initiatives happening, and we have put sustainability right at the core of what we are doing. And I think it sort of does connect on to the previous question too. One aspect I will mention is that I think the Saudi building code that really only came in 2018, so it's very new in the country. People have, and that goes from the municipality approvals right down through the consultants and down to the development partners. It is setting international standards for everything that happens on the construction site and during the process of design. And that was not in place before. And I think that's made a change too. And that incorporates the sustainability aspects of green construction. That's now being regulated, and there are different approaches that people can take to deal with it that are in the regulations. So I applaud that by the government, and I think that more and more as people work towards meeting those goals, it's becoming a much more standard operating procedure in the kingdom. And Amaala is doing their bit to try and make sure sustainability stays at the top of the list.
Thank you, Nicholas. Brett, if I may, on the similar topic, Saudi Arabia has announced one of the most ambitious renewable energy goals. What specific renewable energy strategies are in place to meet the energy demands of your development?
Yes, so as Nicholas was saying, this is a huge topic that covers particularly all of the Giga projects because of the opportunity and size that we all have. And again, just going back to the last question on the Sustainable Development Goals, one of the things, and again, with NEOM being something that continues and is looking at being, you know, the home of millions of people, and having founding laws that are focused on elements that are under the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That's our baseline, and it's, I guess, the clean sheet paper that NEOM will be holding standards to itself, and which is very important in terms of the delivery and the construction of NEOM. Obviously, there are horizons and how that comes into effect, but certainly we're aligned with all of those sustainability goals, particularly looking inward in NEOM. And wider to that, we've got specific sectors that are focused on health and wellbeing, education, but as Nicholas was going on to there, the water, for example, we have a whole sector, and what he was saying an example of is how we were able to desalinate without a byproduct of brine going back into the ecosystem. But very, very importantly also is on the energy side and the clean and affordable energy. And we have an incredible advantage here in Saudi Arabia, and a key area of our focus is green hydrogen, which has been in the news. Now, the combination of quite a few factors here is that there's high levels of renewable electricity that is integral to the viability of green hydrogen, which is a key driver for decarbonisation on the sustainability plan. And it's necessary to satisfy NEOM's power demands as well. And this combination really can only be found in a few countries of the world, and NEOM is uniquely positioned in its location with ample wind and solar capacity, which we will be developing, and also the continuity of NEOM and the population size. So we've got a critical mass of infrastructure and requirement, and the innovative atmosphere throughout the sectors that we have to be a perfect place to take advantage of all these aspects. So we've recently, there's been a recent $5 billion agreement, US dollar agreement with Air Products and ACWA Power to create the world's largest green hydrogen and ammonia production plant, which is a cornerstone to our strategy to become a major player in the global hydrogen market. So with that, and while the global hydrogen economy is still in its infancy, the Kingdom, through what NEOM's doing here and our opportunity here, has the ingredients to progress at speed and spearhead a wave of energy transition, which will have repercussions globally positively. So it's not only making NEOM a key contributor to the Saudi Vision 2030 diversification plans, but it's also supporting the Kingdom's ambition to be a world leader in the creation of hydrogen-enabled circular economy, which I think is really important and a cool thing.
Fully agree. Scott, if I may ask you, what is the role of sustainability in the industry and how will it positively impact Saudi's giga-projects?
I mean, we actually feel like we need to go beyond sustainability to become a global standard bearer in the luxury ecotourism market. And, you know, part of that is taking a regenerative tourism approach on a scale that's really unprecedented. And I think Brett and Nicholas have both alluded to the size of our project sites. We're at 28,000 square kilometers, and we have within that a critical marine habitat. So it's not enough to take a traditional approach using, say, the mitigation hierarchy methodology and looking at avoiding impacts and then offsetting where you can't avoid. We're trying to bring in environmental scientists with our design teams at the outset during concept design to look at, you know, how can we create a net conservation benefit? You know, how do we create or increase conservation values by 30% over the next 10 to 20 years? And I think, you know, that strategy has been key for us, and it's led to what we're calling a value-driven approach to ecosystem services. And that's really looking at, you know, the benefits that ecosystems provide and then saying, well, how do we enhance that? So doing things like reusing stormwater by recharging the aquifer and then, you know, allowing that substrata to naturally purify the water before it's reused, or creating additional areas of mangrove habitat to increase biodiversity, and sequester carbon, store carbon. And these marine environments are highly efficient at storing carbon. And, in fact, it's referred to as blue carbon. It's much more efficient than terrestrial environments. And so we're trying to take advantage of that. And, as part of it, we're in the process of establishing the largest marine protected area at almost 5,400 square kilometers. And I think that combined with offsite manufacturing, prefabricated construction, the use of green concrete, which will lower our construction CO2 emissions by 60 to 65%. All of these techniques working together and approaches working together will allow us to really establish this regenerative tourism approach on our way to becoming a luxury ecotourism destination.
Thank you, Scott. We have only a couple of minutes left, but I do want to have one question, and Brett, I will, if you don't mind, I would like to get your opinion, give you the last question, and how will Saudi Arabia's Giga-projects do you think will contribute to the future growth of the construction sector in the kingdom?
Yeah, I think there's been a theme that has been addressed, whether it be sustainability or COVID and other things. The opportunity that all of the Giga projects have is with the scale and I guess the ambition is being able to set standards and support local industry in being able to get to those standards is a very important part, giving the opportunity for the construction industry here to establish themselves in terms of looking not only at the projects but the continuation of businesses, and particularly on this Red Sea, the corridor, these three key projects, and there's obviously others in other locations, but certainly geographically here, and the fact that NEOM continues, we have an incredible opportunity that we need to be bringing the local construction industry within that, which will be a continuation for them to thrive, not only for these projects, but throughout the Saudi Arabia, but also, and given the locations we have, and particularly what NEOM is building in terms of our industrial city, there'll be the infrastructure there to be able to export what they do regionally and internationally as well. We can't underscore, and it's been mentioned several times, the modern methods of construction and disrupting how design and construction is done. And within NEOM, we have a group that's set up called Design and Construction Innovations. And what the key aspect of that is our strategy around what we call Capital Projects 2.0. And that is completely changing the way that we plan, design and construct. As Nicholas said early on, in terms of the technology infused. In NEOM, we've got the ability of putting this NEOS digital backbone in everything that we do. So that, in terms of the construction industry, gives us an ability to tie everything that we do into that backbone. And one of the big issues in design and construction is not only inefficiencies, but waste. And there's between 8 to 15% of waste throughout the life cycle. And then you get into operations and maintenance and putting the digitisation, robots, and again, taking man hours out throughout the whole value chain. And I would say life cycle, but it's actually regenerative into the circular economy. So there's a lot of industry that we want to be changing here in Saudi Arabia for how design and construction has been done for the last 100 years. So I think that opportunity, it's our responsibility to be able to help Saudi Arabia, the wider Saudi Arabia, convert that and export that to the world.
Thank you so much, Brett. It's fascinating listening to all three of you, your insights about these iconic Giga projects in Saudi Arabia. Wish we had more time, and I'm sure the audience probably feel the same way. But just to summarize, before I hand it back to Ethna for Q&A from our audience, We have been discussing with Nicholas Reynolds of Amaala, Brett Smythe of NEOM, and Scott Henshaw of the Red Sea, the impact of the Giga-projects on Saudi Arabia, the impact of COVID-19 on those Giga-projects, the challenges they have faced on project delivery. We have touched the impact of these Giga-projects on sustainability and environment, and the impact of sustainability and environment on the Giga-projects, and of course on the global economy. So Ethna, back to you.
And a huge thanks to all of our panelists there. And Hamid, thank you so much for moderating that panel. I mean, just tremendous content there. I mean, it's so exciting. What can I say? It's tough to follow that and know where to start here when we want to get into our Q&A. And I know our audience is really excited about this, and lots of questions actually already coming in. So word to them, make sure you get them in now. We just have about 15 minutes, so I'm really, really excited. Nicholas, if I may actually start with you. I mean, all of these projects, they're equally as exciting in so many ways. And the concept of bringing tourism also to Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is a very new content, not very new. I mean, many people have visited there over the years, but it's been so restricted. But when I have been there and I've had the opportunity and the delight to see some of what is on offer, I mean, it's quite exceptional. What will this mean, your project, and indeed just the wider concept of tourism in KSA, particularly in the kingdom, but also to the region and perhaps even beyond?
I think, thank you for everybody listening, and thank you for the question. I believe that the longer term outcomes for the kingdom, at the short term, we're a development company. We are building these assets. We're developing eco resorts. We're doing the right thing by the environment. But that has got a short lifespan. When the assets are open, Amaala becomes a hospitality company. And that's critical for long-term future of the kingdom. So we will be generating long-term jobs. For example, our permanent staff accommodation of the people that work in our resorts is going to be 20 to 30,000 people. So we need to build a new town in a part of the kingdom that has not traditionally been a place of activity for economic development. So I think that shift, and it's happening at NEOM, at Red Sea, Alula, Qadiyah, and other places. I think it'll have a great knock-on effect. And for the 2030 vision, I think there's some powerful outcomes.
Now, Brett, when we look at NEOM, when we look at, you're building towns and cities and ports, and as you said, it's not just about, building this. It will be a development in process. It's not a 5-year project, it's a 10-year project. It will grow and it will develop. And I think this is so exciting in terms of what you build. Talk to us also about, the concept of building an industrial city in the enterprise space, and also how different that will be and the life, I guess, it will bring to this part of the world, and maybe some of the challenges involved in actually putting it in place.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'll talk to the challenges firstly. There's really very little infrastructure that is here. We are fortunate enough that there is an existing port, and a good port, that we will be building our NEOM industrial city around. But the thing is very importantly is that we're putting into life the logistics and the ability for us to bring an environment for international companies and local companies alike to establish businesses and long-term 20, 30, 50-year businesses that are established at NEOM Industrial City. So it's a couple of things: creating a framework, standards, and policies that are going to attract the best internationally, providing the logistics and supply chain, and also creating cities or communities within NEOM that are going to be able to be self-sustaining as well within that.
Talk to me just a little bit, stay on that at the moment, because one area of questions, and you can imagine, you can understand why, is a lot of people also asking about how do they get involved in this project. I mean, you're looking at this huge project that is, as you say, going to bring in the best and the brightest from around the world. Obviously, in terms of your procurement people, there will be some hurdles to meet, and there'll be some very strict requirements. But when we look at the wider community in the construction industry around the world, how difficult will it be to become a supplier in many ways? Because that's what many of our viewers are, and they're curious about that. Scott?
Well, we've awarded $7.5 billion in contracts. It amounts to 500 contracts. 70% of those awards in value have been to Saudi companies, but another 24 countries are represented in those contract awards. So although the bulk of our contract awards have been to the Saudi supply chain, it has reached beyond the boundary of the country, and because of the need for specialists. So there's a big opportunity for others to get involved, and I think that we've seen that maybe recently with the signing of our PPP contract with Aqua Power. That's a contract that provides 100% renewable energy 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Part of that package, which is a fully integrated utilities package, involves the world's largest battery stores so that we can run day and night. It will save us on completion maybe up to 500,000 tons of CO2. And so, that's an opportunity where we had tremendous support from both local and international banks, interest in participating in the tender for this utilities package, and it spans a broad spectrum of assets, everything from STP to solid waste management, power generation, reverse osmosis. And so that's an opportunity really for the local supply chain to be involved, the global supply chain, and we've been very committed to supporting the local economy.
And I think that's so important there because it is a huge development. Brett, let me bring you back in on this again, and I've had a few questions around this, and even people asking about, are there specific skills or professional certifications that you're going to be looking at, or is this too early at the moment? I mean, do we need to get these cities up and running and then everybody can come knocking on the door? Because obviously there's a lot of interest, and even people saying here there's a lot of maybe local talent as well as international suppliers interested to get involved.
Well, certainly, as I said earlier, we will have a combination of international and local supply chain, from the largest contractors all the way down through to suppliers within that within the life cycle of the build. Certainly, over the course of the next 12 months, it'll be the utilities and the transport and general infrastructure as we're building from nothing. That will then start getting into the build of the communities that follow in 2022 and onwards. So let's say the sophistication and technology will be a growth over the course of the next couple of years. But certainly, as I said before, the capacity will be certainly stretched by the volume of work that we need to do, particularly over the next couple of years in establishing the infrastructure. So I think if I get your question correctly, I think there's a couple of layers of this. One of them is for the actual build, and the other is for the sustainable requirements that we're going to have, because, as I said, we'll be continuously building, but then as we start to open up our first communities over the next couple of years, we'll have the requirements will also grow to the operation and facility management, and obviously the maintaining of a growing population, permanent population, transient population, tourism and the like. So you'll see certainly, and in particular over the next 12 months, a steep increase for a combination of both local and international requirements across the whole supply chain.
And from all of you, I'm really hearing, that, I mean, and you've got this great opportunity to build, really, from the the blank canvas, so to speak. I mean, it's very, very exciting in many ways. So you're looking at the best technology. Nicholas, I want you to address this, if you would, in terms of, the technology you can bring in. You have the best architects, this will be a showcase for the world in many ways. But these will be such technologically savvy cities and environments. So this is also very exciting, but again, brings challenges with it as well. Nicholas.
Yeah, some of the challenges, some of our architects, some of the best in the world, as you mentioned, are going to come up with some great ideas, and that'll challenge the building codes, for example, and the local compliance. And when you think about the engineering and design that has gone on previously in the region, it's probably going to be beyond anything that has been seen or approved. So there is challenges in design, in compliance, in the consultants, and then to find the contractors who can construct that stuff. So yes, we need to make sure that we can bring in as much ideas as we can, that we can prefabricate, we can build off-site. We do not want to bring thousands and thousands of workers to the site. As much as possible, we want to be able to get work done off-site. That may be overseas, it may be locally in the region, or it might be in KSA itself. So we're open to ideas. What I've seen is a technology transfer and ideas of international companies teaming up with local companies to bring that technology local. So I'm excited by what that might develop, and I think there's a lot of Saudi companies, very excited about the opportunity of working globally too. So, there may be an export market once this is complete. There's a certain skill set that's been set up now in the Middle East through the projects that we're all working on, and maybe that exports out into Africa or into other areas in the region. So I think the blue sky is very blue, and hopefully we can contribute to that.
It is indeed, and all the eyes on it. Hamid, I'd like to bring you in here if I could. When we listen to, you're a safety and science company, and when we listen to all of the new technology that is going to be deployed, obviously, clearly a role for a company like UL in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of how can everybody make sure that, it's all about safety and bringing all of these great things together. Talk to us a little bit about that. Hamid.
Thanks, Etna. So, I would like to make 3 points regarding cybersecurity. So, good news is we are working with one of the Giga-projects, but since I don't have their express permission, I can't mention their name. But to try to make smart cities secure, we are building a common testing criteria across all their business units. And what that will do is ensure security through the life cycle of the product, starting from design, creation, testing, maintenance, and support, and end of life. Just to give an example in the context to this, let's say the Giga city, the smart cities are trying to procure a smart autonomous vehicle, or let's say a drone. So what are the threats and risks? So we can build a risk profile around that, and once we know what those are, we can build across each of these areas a level of security. So that's what we can do with on the cybersecurity side. On the renewables, and the good news is both. I think Brett talked about Aqua Power, and I think Nicholas did too. And we are very proud to be working with Aqua Power as well. But on the renewables, so UL is working also with Giga-projects to roll out renewable strategies through early stages and inquiries, and including the local resources such as both solar and wind. And we are also, we are doing this through the use of software as well as field measurements. And additional areas that are integrated strategies across feasibility studies, capacity planning, grid planning, technology reviews, technical contractual advisory, and of course the energy yield assessment. And last, to the point that Nicholas made about the new design of buildings that will challenge the current building codes, that's fascinating for us as well. And UL has been working with authorities such as SASO, Civil Defense, and MODAN, and Saudi Aramco to ensure fire safety. So those are the 3 quick points I can make, Etna, about
Really, really important indeed that all is combined. We only have a few minutes together, so gentlemen, if I could, to Nicholas, Scott, and Brett, just maybe get a quick 30 seconds, not even from each of you. If I can start with you, Nicholas, in terms of, obviously people are looking at this as the showcase of KSA, but I would imagine that you also have to make a profit on this as well. I've had a few questions on that.
Yes, I think that definitely it's going to make a profit. The Public Infrastructure Fund and the Saudi government are investing in these assets and expect a return on that investment. Each project is going to have different metrics to measure that, but we are building serious destination resorts. We're building serious tourism assets that over their lifetime will turn around the oil economy that we have now to a non-oil economy, and that's part of the driver that instigated these projects, and we're excited to be part of it.
And Scott, I know you've all been busy. You've managed to maintain operational continuity through the pandemic. You all have managed to do that. But how are things looking? On time, in focus, and looking forward to moving forward, I'm sure.
Yes, Edna, it looks very, very promising. As mentioned, we're aiming to award $15 billion in contracts by the end of the year. And, to your previous point, PIF has selected us to be the engine really that drives tourism for KSA. We're expected at the end of 2030 to contribute $22 billion to GDP on an annual basis through 50 hotels, 1,300 residences, and 800 individual hotel rooms. So, for us, it is about profitability and contributing to GDP, and we're well on our way.
So no pressure at all there. And Brett, I'm going to leave you the closing word on this. I mean, you have cities to build. I mean, this is a huge operation, and there is really so much excitement about this. But how soon can we see the expectations of NEOM coming to reality for us?
Yeah, and certainly we as the other projects have high expectations of contributing obviously non-oil related GDP as part of the 2030 vision. For us, we're accelerating in terms of opening our first communities, and we have some challenging targets towards the end of 2023 in terms of having some established. Certainly, as I'd said earlier, we've got challenges in terms of enormous amounts of infrastructure and base infrastructure we have to put in place first as well. So we're looking at how we can stage our opening up of NEOM over the course of the next 10 years and to be able to really bring what NEOM is to the world at the earliest stage that we can. But certainly we have a very busy next couple of years to be able to get the first communities and the first establishment open for the world.
Indeed you have, and I wish you all the best of luck. I mean, a big focus there, very ambitious projects, very exciting projects for this part of the world. And of course, the Big Five Digital Festival will be watching you, and the Big Five Festival will certainly be watching you for updates next year for 2021. So I really want to thank you so much, Nicholas, Scott, and Brett. Thank you so much. Amaala, NEOM, and the Red Sea Development, and to Hamid, thank you for moderating this session. It's been so wonderful. We could spend a day on it, and maybe we'll get another day down the road to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.